Hello and welcome to China Now. I am Stanley Kwabla. Today's edition features China Currents with Kris, followed by a wide-ranging conversation on our Thinkers Forum segment. From a mega project in Tibet to rising geopolitical tensions, scientific breakthroughs, and questions of war, empire, and global order. It's an episode you will not want to miss. First up, China Currents, our weekly look at China's most compelling developments. Kris takes us through 5 outstanding stories. The groundbreaking of the world's largest hydropower project, a sharp spike in a rare earth export to the US, a breakthrough in ultra-heat-resistant materials, and the historic admission of women into a top-secret military academy, and a zoo's heartfelt gesture towards a young cancer patient. Over to you, Kris.
Welcome to China Currents, your weekly news report on the latest developments in China. In this episode, the largest hydropower project in human history breaks ground in China, raising concerns in India. China significantly increases rare earth exports to the United States. Chinese scientists have developed a new method for producing ultra-heat resistance material for use in spacecraft. The most mysterious military academy in China admits female students for the first time in 72 years. And a zoo empties its wishing well to help a seriously ill girl. I'm Kris. Now let's start today's China Currents. China Currents is a weekly news talk show from China to the world. We cover viral news about China every week and also give you the newest updates on China's cutting-edge technologies. Let's get started. On July 19th, China officially began construction of the most massive and challenging hydropower project in human history, the Yalucangpo hydropower project in Tibet. This mega project has a total investment of 1.2 trillion yuan, approximately 164.4 billion US dollars, and is planned to take 20 years with completion expected in 2045. Once completed, the Yalucangpo hydropower station will have an installed capacity of 60 million kilowatts, triple that of the world's current largest hydropower plant, the Three Gorges Dam. Its expected annual power generation is about 300 billion kilowatt hours, enough to meet the electricity need of 300 million people. That's roughly equivalent to the United Kingdom's total electricity consumption last year. And before launching its project, China spent at least 20 years in planning, research and technical validation. On the technical side, China has extensive experience and success in the 2 core technologies needed for this project. That's tunnel boring and ultra-high voltage, or UHV transmission. Previously, China's Ningqi No. 1 tunnel boring machine drilled the world's first highway tunnel through the Himalayas, making it the highest altitude highway tunnel ever constructed. In long-distance and efficient electricity transmission, China's UHV technology remains globally unrivaled. But with the plan having been in preparation for 20 years, why did China choose this July to officially launch it? Let's look at the influencing factors at play from within and outside China. First, the economic rationale. On the second day after the project broke ground, Chinese cement, steel, construction machinery and Tibet-related stocks surged. As the project progresses, improvements are expected in local infrastructure, talent attraction, and tourism. According to Citigroup, the first year of construction alone could boost GDP by 0.1 percentage point. People's Daily has also repeatedly cited data from the China Macroeconomic Research Center showing that for every 100 billion yuan invested in major water conservancy project, GDP grows by 0.15 percentage points. Once completed, 300 billion kilowatt hours of electricity per year could generate over 75 billion yuan in revenue. That's about 10.4 billion US dollars. And beyond economics, energy security is also a major consideration. According to the CMPC Economics and Technology Research Institute, China's current energy self-sufficiency rate exceeds 80%, but oil still relies heavily on imports. If renewable energy becomes more affordable, it could accelerate electrification of China's vehicle fleet, thereby greatly reducing its dependence on imported oil. But alongside those positive developments, this project has also stirred some concerns. India, in particular, expressed worry that China might cut off its water supply and is concerned about the environmental impact downstream in India. However, based on China's publicly released plans, the project does not involve constructing a large dam or cutting off the water source. Even if the tunnel collapses due to earthquake, the river is estimated to return to its natural course without any risk of flooding. Therefore, the impact on downstream ecosystems and populations would be minimal. That said, the project is not without implications for India. Li Mingwang, Deputy Director of Fudan University's Center of South Asian Studies, said the dam could attract over 100,000 more people to relocate to this region and that infrastructure development could improve the area's geopolitical status. And some Chinese netizens also referenced the Hoover Dam and the broader Colorado River water projects in the United States, which profoundly reshaped the energy and water landscape of the American Southwest, as well as the economic standing of cities like Los Angeles, San Diego, and Salt Lake City. They expressed hopes that the Yallourn project might similarly help rebalance China's economic divide between East and West. Next, let's take a look at one hot topic in China-US tariff war: rare earths. Recently, China's export of rare earths to the United States have surged dramatically. Reuters reported on July 20th that China's exports of rare earth magnets to the United States in June soared to more than 7 times the May level. Citing data from the General Administration of Customs released on the 20th, the report said that as the world's largest producer of rare earth magnets, China exported 353 tons to the United States in June, up 660% from May. Overall, China exported 3,188 tons of rare earth magnets globally in June. That's up 157.5% from May's 1,238 tons, but still down 38.1% from the same month in 2024. Reuters reported that due to the lengthy time required to secure export licenses, shipments in April and May sharply declined, with their exact words being that this move disrupted the global supply chain. While Reuters insinuates that China uses rare earths as weapons in the tariff war, it fails to consider that rare earths serve as a key material for weapons and have long been subject to rampant smuggling. In 2006, China imposed export controls on rare earths with the purpose of stopping smuggling. Reuters also revealed that from December to April this year, the US imported 3,834 tons of antimony oxide from China via Thailand and Mexico, nearly surpassing the total of the previous 3 years. A month ago, China's Ministry of Commerce explained that rare earths have both military and civilian uses, and export controls align with international practices to protect national security while fulfill international obligations. Now let's turn to recent advances in Chinese science and technology. This month, the top-tier journal Science published a paper by scientists from Zhejiang University in China, introducing a novel method for producing aerogels that significantly enhances their heat resistance and mechanical strength, enabling better support for human space exploration. Aerogels are lightweight, porous solid materials with extreme low density and exceptional thermal insulation. They are widely used in spacecraft, military gear, and electronics for insulation and thermal protection. However, traditional aerogels often suffer from low mechanical strength, making them easily damaged by pressure on impact. In a Chinese researchers' paper, they developed a new technique to create arched internal structures within the aerogel, improving its load-bearing capacity. Xu Zhen, an associate professor at Zhejiang University and one of the corresponding authors, explained, "These micro-arches are like helmets or cathedral ceilings. They effectively distribute pressure." And Xu noted the final aerogel can recover completely even after being compressed to 0.1% of its original thickness and can endure more than 10,000 such deformations. Their graphene ceramic aerogel remained stable at temperatures up to 2,000 degrees Celsius, far higher than NASA's Parker Solar Probe, which withstands up to 1,600 degrees Celsius. This method has great potential for industrial-scale production, and potential applications include hypersonic vehicles and aerospace probes. While China's aerospace sector is witnessing leapfrog advances, its deep-sea capabilities are also turning a new chapter. Last week, the PLA Navy Submarine Academy, often seen as shrouded in mystery, broke a 72-year tradition and admitted female undergraduate students for the first time. 10 female students achieved an impressive average score of 628.3 in the university entrance exam, becoming the first cohort of female undergraduate at this institution. Traditionally, women were excluded due to harsh living conditions aboard submarines unfavorable to females, including extreme heat that necessitate minimal clothing, conditions considered unsuitable for mixed-gender crews. The admission of women signals improved living conditions on China's new generation submarines and marks a shift in the PLA Navy's personnel strategy. The 10 girls will specialize in underwater acoustics engineering and submarine command. From female helmsmen on the Liaoning aircraft carrier to female J-15 fighter pilots and now to submarine academy, the PLA is obviously on a path to diversify and refresh its talent pool. And finally, a touching story of a zoo and a seriously ill girl. Last week, a zoo in eastern China refunded a girl's annual pass after news of her cancer diagnosis and donated all the coins from its wishing well to support her family. 2-year-old Xiaoran from Jiangsu loved visiting Nantong Forest Safari Park, especially to see the red pandas. After visiting 5 times in 2 months, her parents bought her an annual pass for 588 yuan, granting unlimited access. In mid-June, Xiaoran was diagnosed with RMS, a rare pediatric cancer with high recurrence risk. The treatment costs could exceed 1 million yuan, putting her family in financial distress. When Xiaoran's mother asked the zoo for a refund, they not only returned the pass fee but allowed her to keep the privileges, and additionally staff collected 12,083 yuan from the wishing well and donated it, along with 50,000 yuan in cash to her family. The zoo explained that visitors tossed coins for health and good fortunes, and they typically donate this money to Red Cross every year. Therefore, the zoo believed that donating it to Xiaoran was also a fitting way to use the fund. The story moved many on Chinese social media, with related topics reaching 9 million views on Weibo. One commenter wrote, "Life is fragile. Cherish every day, and may every child battling illness be blessed." And that's all for today. Thank you for watching this episode of China Currents. If you have any thoughts or comments, please leave them below, and see you next time.
Thank you, Kris. Now let's turn to Thinkers Forum, where ideas and sharp analysis take center stage. In this forum, we hear a swiping critique of American foreign policy, from Ukraine and the Middle East to US-China standoff over Taiwan. The speaker connects past imperial legacies to today's global crisis and offers a stark warning about the road ahead if diplomacy gives way to hubris. Let's listen.
The U.S. still does not understand this till today. And the wars that we see and the crises that we see are still crises of the old imperial mentality. So the war in Ukraine is a war that the U.S. caused, not a war that Putin caused, but a war that the U.S. caused by expanding the military alliance, NATO, eastward, and trying to set up a military base or bases in Ukraine and in the South Caucasus, especially the country Georgia. And the Russian government said, no, you can't have military bases on our border. We don't accept that. That's a real security threat for us. And the American position was, it's none of your business, Russia, what we do. If Ukraine says yes, we're going to put our missiles next to you. And President Putin said, no, you're not. That's dangerous for us. And the United States said, it's none of your business. And so this is the essence of the Ukraine conflict, which is that the U.S. said we can expand our military reach anywhere. The Russians said not on our border. And it finally came to war. Before it came to war, the government in Ukraine in 2010 was very clever. It said, we want neutrality. Well, read Thucydides. The Americans did not accept Ukraine's call for neutrality. What did the United States do to the president who wanted neutrality? It overthrew that president in February 2014. So the U.S. made a coup together with Ukrainian forces. The U.S. role was quite obvious, though it was denied, so we can call it a covert regime change operation. I happen to have been told by some of the participants just how much the U.S. played a role. And at a crucial moment, a phone call by the U.S. diplomat, Victoria Nuland, was intercepted by the Russians and posted online. And that call said the next government should be so-and-so, which was the next government, actually. So the U.S. chose the next government. And where is Victoria Nuland today? She is my colleague at Columbia University. So this is the route to success. Make a coup, and then you get to be a Columbia professor. So this is the Ukraine conflict. President Trump came into office saying, I want to stop this war because it's useless, and the Russians are winning on the battlefield. But interestingly, President Trump does not have the power or the logic to stop the war, because he can't say publicly the obvious. He can't say to the American people, NATO will not expand. If he says that, he's declared, you're a weakling, you're a traitor, you're making a concession to President Putin, you're giving up, you're on the payroll of the Russians. And so the imperial logic still prevails, even if the individual as president might want to do something different. Of course, none of us can figure out Donald Trump's mentality, not even Donald Trump. So we don't know what he really, truly thinks, but what I know is that he seems to want to end the Ukraine war, but does not have the political strength and the individual leadership to end it, because all around him is the military-industrial complex that says the U.S. can go where it wants. Then comes the Middle East conflict, second conflict. This is also an imperial conflict. It started, of course, as so many conflicts do, with the British. And the conflict with Ukraine, by the way, started with the British because in 1853, Britain went to war against Russia for exactly the same reason that the United States went to war against Russia in 2014. Britain said we need to weaken Russia in 1853. So the war in Ukraine is like the 19th century Crimean War, almost the same actors, but the United States wasn't involved in the first one, but Britain was involved in both of them. When it comes to the Middle East, this is also a crisis made by Britain, and it comes from World War I, as you know, when Ottoman Empire, which ruled the Middle East, was defeated by the Allied powers, the US, France, and Britain. And Britain was the dominant imperial power of the age, especially in the Middle East. It ruled over Egypt, it ruled over Aden, which is Yemen today, because this was the route to Britain's empire in India, the sea route. And so Britain was very careful to control the whole sea lane from the Mediterranean to India. And India was the crown jewel of the British Empire. So at the end of World War I, when the Turkish Empire was defeated, Britain aimed to control all of this territory. And it made many promises and many contradictory promises to other powers. Britain told the Arabs, you will control this region. Britain told the French, you will control this region. Britain told the Jews, you will control this region. And of course, Britain ultimately wanted to control the region. So this was typical British imperial deceit or duplicity. But one of the outcomes was the Balfour Declaration, in which Britain called for the establishment of a Jewish homeland in what was a province of the Ottoman Empire, and which became known as Palestine after World War I, which was the ancient Roman name that was used for this territory also. So Britain took over Palestine under the League of Nations, and it said that this would be a Jewish homeland. This is a very complicated, weird story, because the Jewish faith had its main temple in this place 2,000 years earlier, but it had been banished from this place by the Roman Empire in the year 135 AD. And now it was recreating this ancient state. The only problem was that 95% of the population was Arabs who did not want a Jewish homeland in this territory. But Britain used its imperial power to force the in-migration of people of Jewish religion, especially from Eastern Europe, to claim a part of British-controlled Palestine. And a very long story, that has led to 100 years of crisis, because there was a local population. The local population resisted the incoming of migrants from Europe especially, and then after the state of Israel was established, from other regions of the world, including the Middle East and South Asia, and the mentality of the Jewish state, which was established in 1948 by the United Nations, was our security depends on having no Arab state next to us that opposes us. And so the idea of sharing the land, which was a UN idea, was actually rejected by both sides in a way. The Arabs said, we're the majority, we should rule. And the Jews said, we're the minority, we need to dominate, because otherwise we won't be safe. And so this has led from 1948 until today to an unresolved war. But remember, this was a state created by the British Empire and now backed by the US Empire. So Israel could not survive without the US being the imperial power that enforces Israel's power in the region. Because Israel's just 8 million people. The Arab world is about 400 million people. And Israel, therefore, depends on its security entirely on the United States. The United States has seen this as an imperial project that's good for the United States, because if the U.S. has control over the Middle East through Israel, well, that gives the U.S. control effectively, militarily, in the region. So the U.S. has backed Israel for many decades during this period. It's a very dangerous ongoing conflict because it is very unjust, and Israel needs to use more and more force in order to repress the aspirations of the Palestinian people. And the more force that Israel uses, the more resistance there is. And we've reached a point of violence that is unprecedented in modern times. Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza right now, which is one part of the Palestinian lands. And every day they're slaughtering tens or hundreds of innocent people with open fire. And today there was another massacre. People came for food and they were just shot by the Israeli armed forces. Iran, as you know, which is a long empire that has 5,000 years of history, backed the Palestinian cause, and it supported resistance to Israel. Both Hamas and Hezbollah, two groups, and in Yemen also the Houthi militants. So Israel has always had the idea we need to topple the Iranian regime. Instead of saying we need to settle the Palestinian crisis by giving a state of Palestine next door to a state of Israel, Israel has said we need to overthrow the Iranian government so that they don't bother us. And Israel actually made a long list of governments that it wanted overthrown by the United States because those governments were resisting Israel's attempt to control the region. And the list actually was made, literally made, we want 7 governments overthrown. And that list was unveiled in 2001 one of our generals, General Wesley Clark, talked about this in an amazing set of interviews. And the 7 countries are Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Somalia, Sudan, and Libya. So 7 countries that were supporting the Palestinian cause. And the Israeli government said to the Americans, you overthrow those 7 governments. Well, it's not so easy. Those turned into 7 major wars. We had the war in Lebanon for many, many years. We had a 15-year war in Syria, which is still going on because the U.S. tried to did overthrow the Syrian government. We had the U.S. invasion of Iraq in March 2003. We had the U.S. bombing of Libya in 2011, which created a civil war in Libya. We had the U.S. supporting an insurgency in Sudan to break Sudan into 2 countries, Sudan and South Sudan, both of which are in civil war now. And we have had the U.S. supporting interventions in Somalia, which is an ongoing battleground as well. So the U.S., the one that was missing up until 2 weeks ago, or up until last month, was Iran. And the Israeli government was always begging the U.S., bomb Iran, bomb Iran, bomb Iran. And finally, Trump, who's, again, not very smart, not very effective, not very capable of resisting these kinds of demands, said, okay, we'll bomb Iran. And the war, such as it was, lasted 12 days. Israel went in and assassinated dozens of people through its Mossad, the secret service, or the spy agency, but basically it's an assassination unit. And the idea was to create a regime change. But it failed. The government is intact, and the situation is more dangerous than ever because Iran is a country of 100 million people almost. It's a major country. It has big missile systems. It has a real military capacity, and it has an alliance with Russia. And it has friendship with other nuclear powers like Pakistan. So even if it doesn't have its own nuclear weapons, maybe Pakistan will give it nuclear weapons. Maybe Pakistan would defend Iran if there was a full-fledged war with Israel. So this is the second region where imperial mentality lasts until today. The U.S. is unwilling to compromise on the imperial prerogatives. So the final point that I want to raise and then close is the U.S.-China confrontation and how dangerous it is. As I said, the U.S. got along well with China from the 1970s to around 2010, in my estimation, because China was viewed by America as poor, lots of villages that grew rice. You could make our components for our products, make our smartphones, and so forth. But China wasn't a threat. And it was a good counterweight to the Soviet Union or to Russia. That was the attitude. Not too much more. So not too much attention given and not too much concern. And ideology played no concern, because during the Cultural Revolution period, which was not exactly American ideology, This is when the relationship was formed between Mao and Nixon. Then came the opening, and that was an opportunity for investment and trade. That's fine. But ideology played no special role. Starting around 2010, the American leaders that were watching this said, oh, China's getting awfully big and rather successful. And then I think two announcements by China really opened up American eyes. One was the Belt and Road Initiative, which was suddenly an economic, financial infrastructure initiative that had suddenly 100 partner countries, and the U.S. didn't have anything like that. And then the Made in China 2025 program, which was a really brilliant initiative of China to identify 10 major technology areas and set policies to make a major advance in these areas. And this is one of the most successful industrial policies I know of in history, the Made in China 2025, because it really worked. It really produced the EV revolution. It really produced the digital revolution here. It really produced the renewable energy revolution. So it was very successful, but it terrified the Americans suddenly. So starting around 2015, the whole view changed almost suddenly in the United States. The view went from economic partnership to the need to contain China, the need to do something to slow down China's economic advance. Okay, all of this is quite dumb in my view. You don't get ahead in this world by stopping someone else, and there's no reason to. You're not going to be better off. You're not going to be safe. It's just a lose-lose proposition if it's successful, and it probably wouldn't be successful in any event. It started under Obama, by the way. It didn't start with Trump. It started definitely under Obama. And the Trans-Pacific Partnership idea, which was the dumbest idea of trade policy that I know of, which was to make an Asian trade system without China. How can you do that? China's the main trade country for all of Asia, but the United States had the idea, we'll make an Asian trade system without China. This is only in America could you have such delusions. In any event, it started with Obama, it continued with Trump, and it also implicates Taiwan issue, of course. This is the most dangerous flashpoint of all, maybe the most dangerous in the whole world, because the American politicians, because of this mindset, do not know how to stay out of China's internal issues. And so rather than saying, that's not our problem, you settle this peacefully, but it's not our issue, the United States, of course, is providing large flows of armaments to Taiwan. And the American political leaders are talking openly about defending Taiwan and militarily defending Taiwan. If China said we're going to militarily defend the state of Missouri, or we're going to militarily defend Texas, or we're going to militarily defend California, it would not play very well in the U.S. But the U.S., because of the imperial mentality, cannot put itself in China's position or doesn't care to, because the U.S. can determine what should be done. So just to conclude, I view this issue as extremely dangerous. And peace actually depends on the good sense of the Taiwanese leaders, which is fragile. Because if a Taiwanese president were to declare independence, all hell could break out. Because the United States would not necessarily have any responsibility. And this is why the situation is so dangerous. And if Taiwan were smart, and my feeling is Taiwan could end up like Ukraine, destroyed in between two fighting giants. And if Taiwan were smart, the first thing they should say is to the United States, don't send us any weapons, please. We don't want a fight here. We'll handle our own diplomacy across the Taiwan Straits. Please, quote, don't defend us, because we don't want to end up like Ukraine, caught between two giant powers. So I'll conclude here for our discussion to say that the world really is dangerous right now because of this mindset, on the one hand, that I've described in the US, and at the same time because of changing reality. I want to end on an optimistic note. If we can avoid conflict, because of the technological revolution, we really could have a world of shared prosperity. And other regions of the world that seem hopeless right now, like African countries, could really have 40 years of economic development if they would follow China's roadmap for how to do this. And they would end up as a high-income continent alongside the rest of the world. So I'm actually basically optimistic. Worried, but optimistic. Thank you.
That's it for this edition of China Now. Please leave your thoughts and suggestions in the comments, and do make it a point to join us next time as we continue to unpack the forces shaping China and the world. I am Stanley. See you next week.